It was a freezing January morning when Fletcher Avery spotted his daughter's breath clouding the air like smoke as she clung to his side. "Daddy, my nose feels like an ice cube," little Violet whispered, her mittened hand tucked into his tattered coat. Fletcher crouched to her level, brushing her curly bangs from her forehead. "We're almost at the bakery, sweet pea. Just a little longer, okay?" His own hands were raw and red from the cold. He hadn't worn gloves in weeks. He'd given Violet the only pair they owned. The wind sliced through the worn seams of his jacket as they turned the corner near the public park. That's when he saw her. A woman stood alone near the bench, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, shivering. Her coat was stylish, clearly expensive, but thin, completely wrong for this kind of weather. Her lips were blue. Her fingers were bare and trembling. She looked lost. Not in the physical sense, but like she didn't belong here. Her eyes kept darting around, like she was trying to pretend she was fine. She wasn't. Fletcher hesitated. He had Violet. He had $5 to his name. He had no job since the construction company closed last month. But something about the woman pulled at him. Maybe it was the way she looked, like she hadn't asked for help in years, but needed it now more than ever. "Stay close to me," he told Violet, then walked toward the woman. "Miss?" he asked gently, stopping a few feet away. "You okay?" She blinked at him like she hadn't heard a real voice in hours. "I'm fine," she said quickly, then winced as another gust of wind hit her. Fletcher looked down at her hands. She was shaking. He slipped off his gloves, worn leather, lined with faded fleece, and held them out. "Take these." She stared at him. "You're not wearing any." "I'm used to it," he said simply, pushing them toward her. "Please. You'll freeze." Reluctantly, she took them. Her fingers brushed his. They were ice cold. "Thank you," she murmured. "You didn't have to." "I did," he said. "You looked like you needed them." She looked down at the gloves, swallowing hard. "What's your name?" "Fletcher. And this is Violet." Violet waved shyly from behind his leg. "Hi." The woman smiled for the first time, her lips trembling. "Hi, Violet. I'm Liana. Liana Foster." She didn't say her last name like it meant anything. But it did. Liana Foster was the Liana Foster, heir to Foster Lux Holdings, a millionaire in her own right. But in that moment, she was just a woman freezing on a bench, wearing gloves from a stranger who had nothing to spare. Fletcher nodded politely. "You live around here?" She hesitated. "I usually don't come out this way. I needed air." "Not the best day for it," he said with a small chuckle. "Come on, let's get you warm. There's a bakery 2 blocks down. They've got hot chocolate." "My treat." Liana blinked. "I couldn't." "You'll be doing me a favor," he interrupted. "I was going to split one hot chocolate with Violet. If you come, I can pretend I'm sharing with 2 ladies." Liana let out a soft laugh, and it lit something in her eyes, something warm. "Okay," she said. "Just for a few minutes." They walked together, Violet skipping ahead occasionally, then coming back to grab Fletcher's hand. Liana watched them closely, her eyes soft. Inside the bakery, Fletcher ordered 2 hot chocolates and a muffin. It cost almost everything he had. But seeing Liana's pink return to her cheeks was worth it. "You're a good dad," she said quietly as they sat by the heater. Fletcher looked down at Violet, who was happily sipping from a cup almost bigger than her face. "I try. Do you have family around?" He shook his head. "Just us. Her mom left when she was 1. Liana's face fell slightly. "I'm sorry. Don't be. We're good. Some days are hard, but Violet's the best thing that ever happened to me." Liana stirred her drink. "You work?" "Not right now. Construction's slow in winter. I've been doing odd jobs. Enough to get by. Some days better than others." She looked at his hands, red and raw now without the gloves. She clenched the ones he gave her, guilt flickering in her eyes. "I'll get you new ones," she said suddenly. He laughed. "You don't have to do that." "I want to. That's kind, but really, I'm not used to people helping me," she said, cutting him off. "Or noticing when I'm not okay." "You did. You didn't even know me." Fletcher's smile faded. "You look like you needed someone." "That's enough." Liana looked at him like she didn't know what to say to that. After a while, she stood. "I should go." Fletcher nodded and stood too. "Be careful out there." She reached into her coat and pulled out a business card. "If you ever need anything." "Really? Call me." He glanced at the name, raising an eyebrow. "Foster Lux Holdings?" Liana gave a shy smile. "Guilty. You're a millionaire?" "Technically, yes." "Wow," he breathed. "I didn't want you to know." "Not at first," she said. "But I want to help. If you'll let me." Fletcher looked at Violet, then back at Liana. I'm not looking for charity. I'm not offering charity, she said. I'd like to see you again. You and Violet. Fletcher's brows lifted. Like a date. Like whatever you're comfortable with, Liana said. But yes, I'd like that. He stared at her for a moment, stunned. You want to see me? I do, she said honestly. You gave me warmth when I had no right to ask. You didn't know who I was. You just cared. That's rare. Fletcher didn't know what to say. But Violet piped up with a grin. Daddy, she's pretty. You should say yes. Liana laughed, cheeks turning pink. Fletcher looked at her, heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt in years. Okay, let's see where this goes. The next time Fletcher saw Liana, it was a Saturday afternoon, and Violet was twirling in the center of the library's children's reading room with a paper crown on her head. The librarian had just finished story hour, and Fletcher was crouched by a low shelf, helping Violet pick out books when a familiar voice stopped him cold. I didn't expect to run into you here. He turned, startled. Liana stood a few feet away, wearing a navy wool coat and a scarf the color of cinnamon. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, but this time she looked warm, poised, and radiant in a way that made Fletcher feel suddenly underdressed in his threadbare hoodie. I could say the same, he said, rising to his feet. Didn't peg you for a library type. I'm full of surprises, Liana replied. I came to donate some books. Ended up staying longer than I planned. Fletcher nodded, unsure of what to say. Their last encounter had left a strange warmth in his chest, one he hadn't let himself pick apart. Violet, as always, was less hesitant. She ran over, held up a book with a picture of a fox in a princess dress, and announced, "This one's about a royal fox who saves her kingdom with pancakes." Liana crouched, her eyes lighting up. That sounds epic. Can I read it too? With a solemn nod, Violet handed it to her. Only if you do the voices. Liana gave a mock-serious nod. I'll do my best royal fox impression. Fletcher watched them, something nodding behind his ribs. It wasn't just that Liana was beautiful. It was the way she looked at Violet like she wasn't just tolerating her, but actually enjoying her. After checkout, Liana followed them outside. The sky had turned a pale steel color, and snow was whispering at the edges of the sidewalk. Fletcher pulled Violet's coat hood up and tucked her scarf tighter. I was about to grab something to eat, Liana said, brushing a snowflake from her sleeve. Do you two want to come with me? Fletcher hesitated. We don't really have. My treat, she said quickly, then softened her tone. I'd like to. No expectations. Violet looked up at him with eyes too big to say no to. Can we, Daddy? He relented, sighing. All right, but only if it's casual. No fancy places. Liana's grin was immediate. Deal. I know just the spot. They ended up at a tiny diner tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. The booths had cracked vinyl seats, and the floor tiles were uneven, but it smelled like cinnamon and coffee, and the waitress greeted Liana like she was a regular. She comes here? Fletcher asked as they slid into a booth. She does now, Liana said, pulling off her gloves. First came in by accident a few weeks ago. The pie changed my life. Violet giggled. Pie can do that. They ordered grilled cheese, tomato soup, and 3 slices of apple crumble. Liana folded her hands on the table and looked at Fletcher. You said you've been doing odd jobs. Are you looking for something more steady? He hesitated. Construction's what I know, but it's seasonal. I've been applying around, mostly for warehouse work, delivery stuff. She watched him carefully. Would you be open to something different? Not necessarily physical labor. Fletcher leaned back, wary. Depends what it is. I run a foundation, Liana said. It's part of my company's outreach. We fund community programs, literacy projects, housing support. We're opening a new center downtown. I could use someone reliable to help manage logistics, oversee vendors, coordinate supplies. That sounds like a real job, he said slowly. It is, she replied. With benefits and flexibility. You could bring Violet when needed. We even have a childcare room on site. He frowned. Why me? Because you're capable, she said without blinking. And because I trust you. Fletcher didn't speak for a moment. The idea of steady income, of not choosing between rent and groceries every month, was almost too much to process. But there was something else in her offer respect. She wasn't handing him a favor. She was offering him a place to stand. I'd have to learn a lot, he said cautiously. You'd pick it up fast, she said. And I'd be there. Violet, who had been coloring the paper placemat with a red crayon, looked up and said, "Is that where the royal fox works?" Liana laughed. "Exactly." Fletcher exhaled. "Let me think about it." "Of course," she said. No pressure. They ate, talked, and lingered longer than they should have. Fletcher found himself asking about her favorite books, and she confessed a weakness for mystery novels with ridiculous titles. She asked about his childhood, and he told her about summers fishing near the lake with his uncle when he was a kid. The bill came, and Liana paid it before he could protest. When they walked back out into the snow, dusk had settled in. Street lamps glowed like soft orbs above them. "Do you drive?" she asked as Violet tugged on his arm. "Not lately," Fletcher said. "My truck needs a new alternator." She didn't offer to fix it. She just nodded and said, "I'll send a car to pick you up tomorrow, just to show you the center." No expectations. He looked at her, the wind tugging at the ends of her scarf. "Why do I feel like this isn't just about a job?" Liana tilted her head. "Because it's not." He didn't have a response to that. Not one that made sense. She lowered her voice. "I know I live in a different world, but I don't want to stay behind glass in it. I want to be where things are real, where people mean what they say." "That's what I saw in you." Fletcher swallowed hard. "I don't know how to be part of that world." "I'm not asking you to be," she said. "I'm asking you to let me into yours." Violet reached for Liana's hand, and without hesitation, she took it. They walked in silence the rest of the way. And for the first time in a long time, Fletcher didn't feel like he was alone. The town car idled at the curb the next morning as Fletcher tightened Violet's coat. She hopped from foot to foot, trying not to step in the slush pooling along the sidewalk. "I've never been in a black car like that," she whispered. Fletcher glanced at the driver, who stood beside the back door in a tailored overcoat, waiting. "Me neither," he muttered, then picked her up and slid into the leather interior. The heat inside hit him like a wave, and Violet sighed into his chest. The building they pulled up to downtown didn't look like anything special from the outside: gray brick, large windows, a modest sign that read "The Juniper Project," but inside, it was something else. The moment he stepped in, he noticed how clean it smelled. Warm lights, polished floors, and wide-open rooms with tables stacked with art supplies, books, and bins of toys. Liana was already there, speaking with a woman in a navy jumpsuit by a row of floor-to-ceiling windows. When she spotted Fletcher, her face lit up, not the polite kind of greeting he was used to getting from people like her, but something else. Like she'd been waiting for him. "I'm glad you came," she said, walking over. She crouched to Violet's level. "And you? I've got something to show you." Liana led them down a hallway. "This is the kids' wing," she said. "We've got volunteers who run activities during the week. Story time, crafts, learning games." Violet spotted a shelf of puzzles and made a beeline for it. "She can stay here while we talk," Liana said. "There's always someone on duty." Fletcher hesitated. She doesn't usually like strangers. But Violet had already settled in beside a boy building a block tower, her coat forgotten on the rug. "I guess today's different," he muttered. Liana held the door open to a quiet office. No mahogany desk or glass awards, just a corkboard filled with hand-drawn thank you notes and a battered coffee maker humming in the corner. "I wanted you to see this place first," she said, closing the door. "Because this isn't some polished PR stunt. It's where I actually spend most of my time." Fletcher took a seat, resting his hands on his knees. "You said you needed help with logistics." She pulled a binder from the shelf. "We're expanding 2 programs: mobile food distribution and after-school tutoring. I have the people, I have the funding, but I need someone who understands how to get things done without wasting time or money. I've seen you think on your feet. I know you're resourceful." He opened the binder, flipping through the pages. "You trust me with this much?" "I do." His jaw tightened. "What if I mess it up?" "Then we fix it together," she said. "But I don't think you will." He closed the binder and looked at her. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." For a moment, the air between them shifted. Not romantic, not yet, but something was unfolding. Something slow and unfamiliar. She leaned against the desk. "There's a staff meeting tomorrow. If you want to join, just to observe, I'll introduce you to the team." "I'll come," he said. "But I'm not signing anything until I know what I'm walking into." "I wouldn't ask you to," she replied. He stood. "I should get Violet." Liana followed him back down the hallway. Violet was on the floor now, laughing as she colored beside a volunteer. She looked up when she saw her dad. "Can we stay longer?" "Not today," he said. "But maybe soon." They left the way they came, through the front door, past the quiet lobby. Fletcher paused at the threshold. "You're different here." he said, glancing back at her. Liana raised an eyebrow. Different how? You're not trying to impress anyone. Maybe I don't have to, she said. The wind had picked up outside, and Violet clutched his leg as they waited for the car to loop back. Liana stepped out with them, her coat pulled tight. I've got one more question, Fletcher said, looking at her directly. Why me? She didn't blink. Because when everything else in me was frozen solid, you didn't look away. He didn't have an answer for that. But something inside his chest cracked open. The car pulled up. Violet waved goodbye from the window, and Liana stood there on the curb, watching them go, not from a distance, not with detachment, but with something unmistakably real in her eyes. The next day, Fletcher returned. He didn't say yes to the job, but he didn't say no either. And as the week passed, something began to grow between them, not fast, not reckless, but steady. Like roots under frost-bitten soil, waiting for the right moment to bloom. The first time Fletcher saw his name on the office door, handwritten on a paper label taped to the glass, something in him shifted. It wasn't pride. It was something quieter, a feeling he hadn't known in years, solid ground beneath his feet. He stood in the hallway outside the supply room, watching Violet through the observation window of the childcare space. She was stringing beads with two little girls, her brow furrowed in concentration. One of the volunteers glanced up and gave Fletcher a reassuring nod. You're early. He turned. Liana leaned against the doorframe behind him, a tablet tucked under her arm. Her hair was pulled back today, a few strands loose near her temples. She wore flat shoes and a blouse with rolled sleeves. No makeup, no jewelry. You always watch her like that, she asked. Always, he said. She's the only thing in my life I've never second-guessed. Liana stepped beside him. She's happy here. She likes the glue sticks. She laughed quietly. I get it. I used to hoard glitter glue. He looked at her. You? I had a secret art stash under my bed when I was 7. My parents thought creativity was a distraction. Let me guess. They wanted you to study finance. Corporate law, she said. I lasted 2 semesters before I dropped out. He raised an eyebrow. I took the trust fund, she continued. Started a nonprofit without telling anyone. My father didn't speak to me for 3 years. Fletcher exhaled. That's not nothing. No, she said. It wasn't. They walked down the corridor together. Staff passed by, nodding to Liana with the kind of ease that came from familiarity, not hierarchy. She didn't issue orders. She asked questions, listened. Fletcher paused as they reached the courtyard doors. Why'd you really do all this? She looked at him, not evasive, not guarded. Because I got tired of pretending. My life was curated dinners, parties, interviews. But none of it felt like mine. Then one morning, I woke up and realized I didn't actually know what I stood for. I just knew what I was supposed to say. He opened the door for her, and they stepped into the courtyard. Snow still lined the corners of the stone planters, but the sun had broken through for the first time in days. Liana sat on the edge of the bench, her hands clasped between her knees. Can I ask you something you might not like? She said. He nodded. Why haven't you let yourself want more? Fletcher didn't answer right away. A bird landed on the edge of the fountain, shook its feathers, then flew away. Because when you've been at the bottom long enough, he said, you start thinking maybe that's where you're supposed to be. That's not who I see. Yeah? Who do you see? Someone who stepped into the cold for a stranger. She looked at him. Someone who never once asked what I could give in return. I didn't want anything. I know, she said. That's what wrecked me. He stood still, unsure what to do with the heat rising in his chest. Not attraction, he'd felt that before. This was something deeper. Something like admiration. And fear. Because if he let himself believe this woman might actually want something real with him, and it all fell apart, he didn't know if he could climb out of it again. Liana stood. I've been thinking. About what? I want to start a new program. A transitional work initiative for parents. Job training, on-site childcare, transportation stipends. He blinked. That's big. Yes, she said. So I want someone who understands what it means to juggle all of that. Someone who's lived it. You want me to run it? I want you to help design it. Let it, if you're ready. He stared at her. You barely knew me a month ago. I know enough now, she said. And I trust what I feel. He didn't say yes. He didn't need to yet. That night, after Violet was asleep, Fletcher sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, watching the rise and fall of her breath. The apartment was quiet. The heater clicked in the corner. On the coffee table sat a folder Liana had given him, grand outlines, program drafts, A proposal letter with his name at the top. He didn't open it. He didn't have to. He already knew what it meant. 2 weeks later, the Juniper Project launched the new initiative. Fletcher wore a button-down shirt Liana had given him without ceremony, no tags, no receipt, just folded and placed on his desk with a sticky note that said, "This one's yours." Violet started spending more time at the center, and soon she was helping sort supplies and reading to younger kids. Liana brought lunch sometimes, and they'd eat with their feet propped on folding chairs in the back room, talking about nothing and everything. And then on a Friday afternoon, just as the staff were packing up for a long weekend, Fletcher walked into the rec room with a sheet of paper in his hand. Liana looked up from where she was kneeling, fixing a loose hinge on a toy cabinet. "I signed it," he said. She stood slowly. "You're sure?" "I'm not afraid anymore," he said. "Of wanting more. Of building something better." Liana stepped closer. "You're not the only one." He took the paper, folded it, and slid it into her hand. "We're in this together now." Her eyes didn't leave his. "So does that mean I get to take you and Violet to the lake next weekend?" "You have a lake?" "I have a cabin," she said. "And a truck that works." He laughed. "You're not playing fair." She leaned in. "I'm not trying to win." Fletcher reached for her hand, calloused fingers brushing her smooth ones. "Then what are you doing?" "Building something real," she said. "With you." When they kissed, it wasn't cinematic. It wasn't orchestrated. It just happened, simple, honest, and entirely theirs. Later, Violet ran into the room, a paper crown askew on her head. "Did I miss something?" she asked, looking between them. Fletcher lifted her into his arms. "Only everything good." And for the first time in years, he believed it. Fletcher stood in the community center's multi-purpose room, adjusting the microphone clip to his collar. Rows of folding chairs filled with families, volunteers, and city officials stretched out in front of him. Violet sat in the front row, bouncing her heels against the chair legs, wearing a yellow headband dotted with fabric sunflowers. Liana stood off to the side near the refreshments table, watching him with her arms crossed and a soft gleam in her eyes. He cleared his throat, his voice steady. "A few months ago, I didn't think I belonged in a place like this. I thought people like me didn't get second chances, let alone the kind that came with job titles and doors with our names on them. But someone told me I didn't have to carry that weight forever, that I could build something, and that it could matter." There was a beat of silence before the room erupted in applause. Fletcher didn't look at the mayor or the press photographers. He looked only at Liana. After the speeches, as the crowd dispersed toward the food tables and games set up for the kids, Fletcher found her near the hallway. She was sipping from a plastic cup, her eyes on Violet, who was now trying to teach a group of toddlers how to do a conga line. "I didn't think I'd be nervous," he said, coming up beside her. "You didn't look it," she replied. "You looked like someone who'd done this 100 times. It was easier than I expected." "Because it's yours," she said. "You earned every bit of this." He looked at her, and something unspoken passed between them. Not gratitude, not admiration. Something deeper, something permanent. "Come with me," he said. She followed him through the back hallway, past the supply closet and the staff lockers, until they reached the door to the rooftop terrace. It wasn't open to the public yet, still in progress, but he had the key. The air was crisp as they stepped out. String lights had been half-strung, coiled in loops above weatherproof tables. The city skyline stretched beyond the railing, amber and gold in the late afternoon light. Fletcher took her hand, guiding her to the edge near the corner. "I've been thinking a lot about what's next." Her brow lifted. "You're not leaving, are you?" "No," he said. "I'm staying. But I want more than just this place. I want permanence. I want Violet to grow up somewhere she can feel proud of. I want to wake up every morning knowing I'm not walking this alone." Liana's eyes searched his. "What are you saying?" He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. It wasn't velvet. It wasn't from a jeweler. It was a simple wooden square, hand-carved, and inside was a ring with a single diamond set in a band of brushed silver. "Marry me," he said. "Not because I owe you anything, and not because we built this place together, but because when I'm with you, I remember who I am. And I want Violet to grow up watching what real love looks like." Liana's lips parted, her breath catching in the chilled air. "Fletcher, I know it's fast. I know we haven't done things the usual way, but nothing about us has been usual. And still, it feels right." She looked down at the ring, then back at him. "You're asking me to choose real over perfect. I'm asking you to choose this," he said. "Us. Messy, honest, and completely ours." Liana stepped closer, her voice low. I've spent my whole life being what I thought I had to be. With you, I get to be who I really am. And I've never felt safer. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Her hands were shaking. I love you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Fletcher leaned in, brushing his lips against her, slow, certain, and full of promise. From the stairwell below, Violet's voice echoed up, calling for them. Daddy, Liana, there's cupcakes. They looked at each other and laughed. Yes, we should tell her, Fletcher said. We should, Liana replied. But let's do it after the cupcakes. That night, after the last guest had left and Violet was dozing in the back seat of the car, Liana rested her head on Fletcher's shoulder. They drove in silence, headlights cutting through the quiet streets. When they reached his apartment, he carried Violet up the stairs, her arms looped around his neck. Inside, the air was warm, calm. Liana curled up on the couch, her feet tucked beneath her. Fletcher joined her after settling Violet into bed. I've been thinking about something, she said. Dangerous words, he teased. She nudged his leg with her foot. I want us to renovate that old house on Elm. The one near the park. It's got a broken porch and cracked windows, but the bones are good. We could make it ours. He looked at her. You want to move in together? I want to build a life, she said. Not just a program or a project. A home. With you. With Violet. Fletcher reached for her hand. Then let's do it. Spring came early that year. Within weeks, the house on Elm was theirs. Fletcher took on the repairs himself, one weekend at a time, with Violet handing him nails and brushing paint onto the shutters. Liana planted herbs in the windowsills and strung fairy lights over the back porch. They married in a small ceremony at the Juniper Project, under the archway they'd built together for the youth garden. Violet wore a flower crown and walked down the aisle between them, holding both their hands. There were no photographers, no media, just the people who mattered. And when Fletcher pulled Liana into a kiss beneath the string lights, Violet clapped so loudly the sparrows in the trees took flight. They danced barefoot on the grass. They ate pie instead of cake. And when the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the courtyard, Liana whispered into Fletcher's ear, "This is ours now. Forever." And it was. They built a life rooted in truth, watered by second chances, and lit by the kind of love that didn't need to be perfect to be everything they ever wanted.